What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today, as you can see from the title, we are going to be doing a couple of things to keep the build on the Evo 8 going. A couple of things are going to be, one, installing or reinstalling the stock fuel injectors and fuel rail, and then just going ahead and throwing on some new hoses that I bought, which would consist of radiator hoses and lines for the heater core. With that though, there is one thing I want to go over first before we jump into the actual content of the video. That being, if we do watch the last video that I posted, which I can link up here somewhere, one of the things that we did do in the video was we went ahead and installed a bunch of silicone vacuum lines to replace a bunch of the old worn out vacuum lines that came on the car that are probably like 20 years old at this point. There is one thing though that I did overlook. One of the comments on the last video was from a guy named, was it J Kiley 4466. Big shout out to him. Something I did overlook that he mentioned that I actually didn't even think of, but it's a very valid point, and I'm very grateful for him for shouting out that little tip. We can go over that right now though. So I do apologize if the lighting is kind of crappy. It is like 90 degrees out right now, and I'm just refusing to open those doors because it gets way too hot. With my dehumidifier over here, it actually does keep the room kind of nice to work in. But with that, what I did overlook was this guy right here. This is the brake booster line from the intake manifold. So what the brake booster does is it uses vacuum pressure from the manifold to be able to help assist with braking. So that's why you don't have to like really slam on the brakes in order to make them work. In the stock line, there is something called a check valve. So somewhere along the route in the stock line, there is a valve that allows pressure to come through this way, but will not allow any pressure to come back out that way. So the issue with turbocharged cars is when they go into boost, you do not have vacuum, you're now in boost. So with the check valve, it stops the pressure that built up from vacuum prior to boost, and it stops it from coming back out. So that while you're in boost, you don't lose any kind of braking feel. One of the things that Jay Kiley did mention was that if you do run just a line without a check valve, you can not only lose brake pressure, which obviously is dangerous, you could also break the brake booster, which obviously with the way Evos are nowadays and hard to find parts, I can't imagine that's a cheap part to have to replace. So once again, big shout out to him. I don't like to make a mistake. Not in the fact that I don't mind making mistakes, but I would hate to think of somebody else making that mistake, seeing me do it. So I wanted to make sure right at the start of the next video, I called out what I did wrong, who told me about it, and then what we did to fix it, just so everyone can learn from my mistakes. But with that being said, we can now jump on the actual content of the video, and let's get started on those fuel injectors. Okay, so I did just go ahead and do a couple of things off camera. There are just a couple of brackets down here behind the intake manifold on the intake manifold stay that I had to bolt in. Really tedious stuff that you don't want to have to do. But that does bring us to the fuel injector area, I guess. So what we will do is we have 1, 2, 3, 4 spots where the injectors go in. There are rubber seals that go in and seat into those little holes. And then it's honestly not that bad to bolt it in. It's literally just 1 and 2 bolts right here that are gonna bolt it in place. And that's gonna be it, so let's jump on that. So here we have our stock fuel rail. It has been sanded down, primered, repainted, finished, so that it looks all nice again. It does have the stock pressure regulator still bolted on. These injectors do have tiny little seals that seat into the intake manifold. So we are gonna go ahead and throw this in the car. Okay, so these little guys that are on the injectors, they don't like to stay on, so I'm gonna go ahead and just try to insert those into their spaces beforehand. They fit in there pretty like snugly, so I don't think it should be an issue with not seating properly. So we'll go ahead and throw those in, and then we can get this in. All right, those guys are in. We should be able to install this. If in the future there is any kind of leak of fuel, we'll obviously smell it, we'll find it, and we can address that if necessary. All right, so the fuel pressure regulator is obviously going to go on this side, so we know the orientation of how we're supposed to insert it. The injectors are seated properly, and then we can just go ahead and try to line these up as best we can. although it doesn't always go perfectly. Just gonna try and pop this vacuum line off, just get it out of the way. Probably should have taken this rear line off just since I went through all the trouble of repainting it. All right, they are getting in there nicely now, and it looks like we are seated. All right, now we gotta do is go find those 2 bolts for here, just bolt the fuel rail in. Okay, now that we have that all nice and seated, we are gonna go ahead and throw in the 2 bolts right here and right here. So these are just 2 12mm bolts, and I'm just gonna gently hand tighten them in and then torque them down to the suggested torque rating, which I honestly have no idea what it is, but I am gonna Google it and find out for you guys. Okay, so I did look it up. It's like really super light. It's 107 inch-pounds plus 8 inch-pounds, which ends up being 9.5 foot-pounds. So that's what I'm gonna go to. It's really not much. All right, all set. Hey, so one thing I did forget, I don't know how I forgot, I'm kind of stupid, but I'm just gonna go through it so you guys don't waste your own time. The one thing I did forget, it's kind of stupid, but this bracket right here for the fuel return, it's these 2 bolts. They're actually for these 2 bolts that I've already torqued down to the 9.5 foot-pounds. So I'm just gonna go ahead, throw this in with those bolts and then just retorque it. The one last thing that I did notice, I didn't really do it, but for someone who maybe is replacing vacuum lines, on the rear of the intake manifold, there's a purge solenoid for the emissions, and there is a check valve in one of those lines too. I didn't replace those lines with silicone, so it's fine, but just in case you are gonna be replacing with silicone lines, I would just go ahead and get the intake manifold diagram offline from like the service manual from the factory, and then that way it does show you in the diagrams where there's check valves so that you won't make the mistakes I made. Okay, so what we got now is the feed line for the fuel rail. So I'm just gonna pop that guy right in here. It is just an O-ring that keeps it in place, so there is no gasket or anything. And it's just 2 10mm bolts that are gonna hold this guy in. So we'll get those threaded in by hand, get those tightened down. And then up top, all we have is the fuel rail return line. And that is just gonna go with this guy, and it's just a hose clamp. I do have some new fuel line, so I might go ahead and replace that, but honestly, no, I probably won't. This wasn't a very high torque spec. It was even less than the 9.5 foot-pounds, so I'm just gonna like hand tighten it a little bit and then call it a day. If there is any leak, like I said in the past, we'll just go ahead and retighten it. But all that leaves is this guy. I am probably gonna go ahead and I will do new fuel rail. Just this is like really brittle, kind of looks like it's cracking. I am gonna throw it on right now just to get it reconnected for the video, but I probably will go ahead in the future, and at least for this return line, I will replace that with some new fuel line. Yeah, this fuel line has definitely seen better days, but I just kind of want to see it all set up, to be honest. But I will grab some new of that. All right. Okay, so now that the fuel rail is back in and that's all set, I did get a delivery in the mail. Got my new check valve in. Gonna show you kind of how this works. So like I said earlier in the video, the check valve basically allows vacuum pressure into the booster, but does not allow it back out. So you can see and you know which way is the right way, because if you look at the white side, if you blow through it, you can get air through, but if you have the black side, it's impossible to blow back through it. So that's why it keeps the boost pressure, or I guess, sorry, the vacuum pressure in the brake booster. So I'm gonna go ahead real quick, little side mission that wasn't really part of the video, but it came anyway, so you might as well. I'm gonna go ahead and splice this into the brake booster line. Okay, so for the check valve, you do want to try to install it, obviously, in the brake booster line, but you want to try to install it closer to the intake manifold side. That way there's more vacuum pressure built up in here to feed the brake booster while you're in boost. So the best bet for me, you don't want to do it obviously in like a bend. So I'm probably going to shoot for like right around here where it is a nice straight section. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that with my hose cutters and then just install it right in. This ground out of the way. Go ahead right about right there and try to get it as straight as possible, but it doesn't always work. So again, the white side you can blow through, so that's the side that's gonna connect in here. So really it's just gonna stuff right in there. And then this guy stuffs right in here. And now we have a check valve. So I am gonna go ahead and I'll just throw some zip ties on here just to secure it down a little bit more. And that'll be it. Okay, so with that check valve out of the way, we are gonna go ahead now and throw on some brand new OEM heater core lines that I bought. So the way that I'm figuring it is they are labeled. This one has 2 dots, the other line has 1. This guy right here is gonna go to the thermostat housing, and then right down, see it, right down here. This bigger guy, it's hard to show with my hand, but you have the 2 nipples. You have the first one right here and then the one in the back. The bigger one in the back is for the heater core line, and that's gonna go to this side. And the cool thing is when you buy the OEM lines off STM, they do come with the clamps as well because, well, the other ones are really rusty. And so with that, we'll go ahead, probably throw it on a time lapse. I'm gonna go ahead and get the 2 heater core lines installed, as well as trying to throw the coolant lines from the throttle body back onto the crossover pipe. So enjoy that. Okay, so as you can see in the time lapse, probably I did not clamp anything down. I didn't use any of the worm gear clamps. I just mocked it up just really for me, because so I can see kind of where it goes, so I know that they're in place. I do have to go back and put some clamps on. The coolant lines from the throttle body, I will likely just use worm gear clamps because it's not like it's super high pressure or anything. But the clamps that did come with the heater core lines, they are a specific type of clamp. It's a pressure clamp that you have to squeeze and almost crimp down. So I do need to get a special pair of pliers in order to be able to crimp that down, which isn't a big deal. I just obviously can't finish it in this video. But I am glad that I got it in. I think it is looking nice. They're nice and fresh, brand new. They're not old looking. So, I mean, the engine bay is really coming together. Intake manifold basically is set up. It shouldn't take very long to get the last of the lines installed. But I am happy with the progress today. I know it wasn't too much, but for a day where it's 90 degrees out, and I really didn't even really want to work on the car today anyway, but I know I have to in order to try to meet my deadline. I am happy with what we got done. So, you know, sometimes you kind of just have to take it easy. So in the next video, I think what we are going to do is try to continue on going ahead, keeping this build going. I believe the next thing I likely will do will be, I guess, try to clean up the front of the block, try to paint the front of the block wherever I can, clean up the mating surface for the exhaust manifold, and maybe try to install the turbo back in. It is not in like the best shape, so I'm going to try and go through, run through, give it a good cleaning, try to get that installed back. I do have a few studs that did come out. The ones that are still in, I am just going to clean them up with a wire wheel and go with these guys. However, for the ones that did come out while I was trying to take the exhaust manifold off, I do have new ones to replace these for. So those will be new. I'll clean these guys up, and then I have a new gasket and everything to be able to do that. But after that, I guess it's just trying to install the manifold, get the intercooler piping on, throw the radiator in, and I guess try to get it restarted. I do have a fuel pump that I'm going to try to put in. I don't know what kind of fuel pump is in the car. However, I do have an extra AEM 340 that I would like to put in just to make sure the fueling's there. But obviously with putting a bigger fuel pump, especially in an older car, I am going to have to then try to hardwire it from the battery, because once I put a bigger fuel pump in, I don't want to do the thing where you just click it in and hope that the wires can handle the power of the bigger pump. So I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out, maybe on my own, build my own kit. It does seem pretty easy to do, so I'm going to do a lot of research on it. I have installed one on the STI. so I have some idea what you are looking for in a hardwired fuel pump. But that's pretty much the plans for the car, and hopefully, I don't know about mid-July, 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away is kind of not too much time to finish a guy up, but I guess we'll see. But with that being said, if you guys are enjoying the content and you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do go ahead, smash that subscribe button, leave a comment, like, and once again, huge shout out to my boy, Jay Kiley. Wouldn't have had a very good brake booster situation had he not gone ahead and commented on that. And honestly, I know sometimes on YouTube channels people can leave really malicious comments and be super jerks about everything, but I mean, honestly, that's really what makes it worth it, is learning stuff from people who are watching and then maybe teaching some people some stuff they don't know. But again, with that, that's all I got. So until the next one, peace out, keep wrenching, guys.